Yeah. Yo, what's going on, world? We back on the X Games, the X Waves. Um, we get to the right screen here. It's your guy Horace checking in, wanting to kick off this stream right as the market kicks off. Um, this is the super chart. Uh, our plans today are to cover the one and only Digital King, Bitcoin, of course, and SPX and gold as well. But I think these are like the heavy hitters of the market on any given day. I think oil may be in that mix as well, Ethereum and a few others. But for me, Bitcoin, SPX, and gold, I watch those very frequently. What I think for Bitcoin here, I think a very major move is pending for Bitcoin. I think I shared this on the last stream I did as well. But I think there is some bullish, action here pending for BTC in the short term. Let me see where this trend goes here. So yeah, it's still tweaking above a pretty decent trend here. So expecting this action to keep pushing along on this trend line for a bit, but I think support will be delivered here for Bitcoin shortly. And by today, what is it, the 3-day chart? In a few days or so, rather, we should see BTC back at about 104K. I mean, just looking to the left over here, you can see there's plenty of buyers. There's plenty of liquidity that's about to be exercised here. So I don't think it'll be very shocking for BTC to climb back above 104 here shortly. But I do think based on the formation, at least what I'm saying, these are not, of course, these are not, let's see what we got here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a 3-wave move instead of a 5-wave move. So essentially, I think this is a zigzag here for Bitcoin from this 80 to 93K range. And yeah, this shit ain't cutting it. But looking at the waves here as well, you can see that these are also very much overlapping waves here. This is not an impulsive wave. Just because we see waves go in one direction, that doesn't necessarily classify it as a trending wave, right? But looking at this here, at least to me, I feel very strongly that this is an overlapping wave. Nevertheless, I think it has the legs to reach up to 104 or so here soon. But I also think that based on the formation that Bitcoin will also drop back below 100K, probably back to about 90K, perhaps by sometime, March or mid-February or so, at least based on how the waves are looking here today. From a bigger, more macro perspective, I'm still very, very, and I say still as of 4 or 5 days ago, maybe, I'm still very, very bearish on Bitcoin in the macro perspective. I'm very confident that Bitcoin is going to push up to about 150K or so soon, but also based on this macro formation, anybody telling you that this is an impulsive wave, they have not really dug into this area here to make that confirmation, because it's truly not an impulsive wave. So based on these being corrective waves, a macro corrective wave, I still feel very strongly that Bitcoin is going to drop also very strongly sometime probably around mid 2026. But I do think that 150K will come, here, not soon, but mid 2026, I think. And it could push a bit higher. The FOMO will be there, the craze, the euphoria, all of that will be there. All of that emotion for a lot of investors will be there. So it could push up even higher than this trend line suggests it will. But based on this macro formation, I'm very confident that there's going to be some straightening out or some correction on this wave after that move happens. So be on the lookout for that. You know, understand a lot of people are chasing Bitcoin, but you know, the news is going to be late. You know, don't base your decision on what these whales are doing. Consider structure, consider risk, of course. But you already know those things, right? So I'm not gonna harp on that shit too much for real. Let me see. SPX. I think that shit just open. Let's jump there. Let's do that. Yeah, I know this song jamming. And yo, this red mark up here, I had this here since yesterday. You can jump on the Discord and check for yourself. But this wave here definitely anticipated that to push up here on today. I wouldn't have been surprised if it started up here, to be honest, but I do think that this wave is going to push up here. Maybe not by today necessarily. I don't want to say that, but I do think we have a sideways action coming here for SPX. And there's a few ways this can come, to be honest. You know, I think we have a pretty decent zigzag down here. So this could be an extended flat wave, like so, sort of. This could be a regular flat wave where this next drop doesn't break below this zone, or this can be like a regular flat where it sort of evens out here. You know, so not really sure how this sideways action will play out. This could even be a triangle, to be for real. Triangles just go sideways and just bore everybody, right? But it could also be a triangle and then push up from there as well. So not really sure how this is going to play out. From my perspective, I think the extended flat correction is the most common. I think the second would be maybe the running flat, but I think one of those are going to come here for SPX. And I think it will continue to push up throughout next week, but there should be also a big bear coming for SPX as well. And I've said this for the past 2 years, you know, to be for real. I can't lie about it. But based on the macro waves and what I've been seeing even since the last sort of proclamation I've made, I feel that it has given confirmations of this wave sort of being finished. We'll see how that sort of plays out. But I think here in this case, I think at least for me, once SPX breaks below, I want to say once SPX breaks below 6,800, then I'm going to become a bit more confident that this macro wave is playing out like I think it is. But for now, these waves are overlapping. There is a very macro trend line here that SPX is currently sitting on. And I remember learning, like, one of my first weeks after I started investing, after I started studying price action, it wasn't Elliott wave theory that I was studying, but I was just studying like some general shit. And, you know, it said pretty clearly that an up wave or an uptrend followed by a corrective, you know, or another uptrend is going to be corrective or something to that tune. Maybe I don't recall it correctly, you know, all the way, but this looks very interesting to me. I'll put it that way. I don't want to say troubling necessarily, but I am very bearish on the SPX here. And I think it could drop down to about 3,000 at some point next year. That's quite a ways from now, of course. But I think in the short term, we could even see SPX return to this lower trend line here at around 59,000 or so. So a little bit below 6,000. And I don't think we should be far off from that. We may see that in 2026, depending on how things play out. I think they say stairs up and elevator down or something like that. But I think this could be a pretty interesting setup here for SPX. And I would just, you know, consider risk and sort of steer clear of any high exposure here on SPX. But that's just me, right? That's just me. Let me see what 1 second here. All Yeah, so I think SPX is going to keep pushing up here. It should hit about 7,100. It definitely has legs still to climb. It's going to go sideways for a bit, maybe about, you know, a week or so. I think this is going to be a little bit more sideways, to be honest. But SPX is going to get very interesting very soon. Maybe by next Friday, we'll see more telling action of what I'm talking about. But let's look at these RSIs here. I don't use many indicators, but I do appreciate RSIs. What's the other one? TSI or some shit. Um, yeah, truth strength. I appreciate those. But as far as on the chart, I just want the candles. Just give me the candles and the most macro chart you can find. But looking at SPX here, I know it's kind of hard. You can't really judge much from these monthly oscillators, I suppose. But even here, it's at a very interesting and high level, right? There's also divergence here. There's been divergence since 2017. Okay, maybe even before then. There's been divergence since 19. Yeah, it's been divergence for a minute, bro. Probably since 1929. But hey, it's been still climbing, right? So you can't judge anything along off this divergence. But looking at this from a macro perspective, and I think I showed this last time we connected as well. By the way, if you are locked in with your boy, please do retweet, not retweet, please do share, comment, whatever possible to show some support. I would love to sort of help um, as many people as possible consider risk and possibilities other than what the mainstream media is pushing and all these analysts and influencers or whatnot. But looking at SPX from a macro perspective, once again, we can see here very clear wave up, wave down, right? 1, 2, very clear wave up, correction to the side, right? 3, 4. You don't even have to know the very intricate details of Elliott wave to sort of see this 5-wave move for SPX. 3, 4. God damn. 3, 4 here, right? And then you get another push up. 5, right? So you have to look at this from the macro perspective. And then even looking at it from a more micro perspective, these waves, there's 5 waves here, and they're starting to overlap at the top. So I'm saying, considering the macro chart, considering the trend, the RSI, I think people should really take caution as it relates to exposure to SPX. Um, that's just my 2 cents, right? So jumping to one of my favorite charts here, when I first started, analyzing charts and really like living on charts, I will say I live on these charts nowadays, and I have been since like 2019. But looking at this macro chart here, or rather what I was about to say was gold is one of my favorite charts, along with Bitcoin. Spent a lot of hours on this, a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings. So this is like BFF right here. But looking at this chart as well, I also think gold is in a very interesting situation. And it's kind of wild because all of these interesting situations are lining up at the same time almost. So it's like traditional investors or people who've been relying on a certain bread basket for a long time. Maybe those bread baskets won't be as reliable, as we move forward. But we'll see. Things are just going to get very interesting as far as these charts go, anyway. But looking at gold here, as I said in the last video, I think I covered gold, but I think it's due for a very sharp correction as well, for the same very macro reasons and the same very telling micro waves as well. Look at this big, huge diagonal wave here, this big, huge wedge. 3-wave move here, 3-wave move here, double zigzag here, actually. So first zigzag here, then we get a 5-wave move that you can kind of see here in yellow. And then another 5-wave move here. But within that last 5-wave move, it looks very much like we are working on my favorite shit. Another funky diagonal wave, right? Very small one here. This is all just funky action, like very funky action. But this 4 stays above 2. We get an impulsive wave here, I believe, for this first wave. And then for this wave C, this third wave, which is called wave C, we're getting another diagonal wave. So I'm seeing a lot of overlap. I'm seeing a lot of even, divergences here as well. So, you know, I guess you can say I'm kind of a contrarian investor or trader. I had to look at what that word meant recently because I thought it was fairly negative, but it just means that you sort of make your decisions before the consensus or the crowd typically does. So I'm cool with that title. But if you're on plan goal, make it do what it does, enjoy the pump while it's here. But looking at this from a macro perspective as well, and I'm going to keep talking about this. I'm going to keep jumping on these videos. I don't care if it's 5 people here or 6. I could be talking to myself for all it counts, but I'm doing my good Samaritan shit, right? Let me see here. Gold also looks like it's in a double zigzag wave to me. Like if anybody, thinks it's an impulsive wave, I would love to talk about it and dive into the waves with you even further. But, at least to me, it looks like it's in a double zigzag sort of wave. And you can throw the fibs on this guy. Matter of fact, I'm gonna help you out. Shit, that's what I'm here for. We can put this fibs on this guy, right? And you could pick whichever fib you want to that's more popular or common with whatever theory that you use. And you can see, if you think this is in a double zigzag to begin with, you can see that this is going to be due for some sizable correction fairly soon, right? And what's fairly soon when you're looking at a 200-year-old chart? It's kind of hard to say, but I think diving into the waves here more intricately, more intimately, I think that's where you can kind of get that confidence and that signal as to what the micro is doing in alignment with the sort of macro, So I think these are going to be 3 very interesting tickers. I do think that everything's moving over to the blockchain. I've been saying for the past couple months now, everything all at once. And it kind of seems like that's happening. But unfortunately, it seems like it's happening at the top of a macro push for Bitcoin. And it seems like a lot of our companies and our governments are buying heavily into Bitcoin at this time. So maybe I'm wrong. And if I am, I will, proudly be wrong. But based on what I'm seeing and based on confidence that I've gathered from long-term use of Elliott wave theory, religious use of Elliott wave theory, I would say, I think these are going to be very interesting times for Bitcoin, gold, and SPX. I think that altcoins are surprisingly going to be the safe haven. I don't think all altcoins are going to perform necessarily well. I think some are going to go stupid and just blow the top off, and some may just perform on average, right? But I think altcoins are going to collectively perform a lot better than Bitcoin is. And looking at this total 3 chart here, I think this is in a macro zigzag wave as well. A lot of people say zigzags are the most common Elliott wave theory. The Elliott wave fractal. Other people say it is the second most, only to a double zigzag. So there you have it. But looking at this chart here, looking at this trend, I don't think total 3 is going to return to this trend anytime soon as far as the top side of it. I think more so based on fibs, right? The fibs don't fib. You know how we do. Based on fibs, this is already like actually past the full 100% extension level. So it's actually doing pretty well on a fib level from that measurement. It should be going a little bit higher based on this more micro. It's not really micro. This is like a midterm, mid macro or some shit. Based on this fractal here that's in red, I think that total 3 has some legs to go still. I see a wave 1 down here in this area. I think we have a flat correction here for wave 2, pushing up for wave 3 here, a sharp correction for wave 4 possibly, another flat in this wave 2 here. Let me just clean this one up a bit. Another sharp zigzag here, and I'm pretty sure we're getting a diagonal wave here as well. I don't think people realize how common diagonal waves are in Elliott wave theory, but between diagonal waves and zigzags, I think that's really like the point that a lot of people sort of fall off on. That's just my perspective, but these are very common within the sort of framework and the sort of realization of how these waves play out, at least in my opinion. I'm wrong a lot though. So looking at the waves here, I think this is in the diagonal wave for total 3. So while I am super confident and super bearish on Bitcoin, or I will be after the midpoint of this year, after it pushes to about 145, 150K, I think total 3 will continue to push out and pretty much hold it down for a little bit longer. I think the storm is going to come for total 3 and altcoins as well. Where it's going to be the more long-term, multi-year safe haven, I'm going to guess like energy or, like daily use shit, like wheat and sugar and corn. But I think at least until the end of 2026, maybe Q1 of 2027, that altcoins are going to push higher than Bitcoin, higher than what they are now. Let me just put a trend line on this guy. I love trend lines. Like, they're not the bread and butter of what I do, but they are a good compliment. Know what I mean? So you got a good confluence here. You got a solid wave count. At least I feel like I have a solid wave count here. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that altcoins, at least for the next year, are going to be safe haven. All altcoins are not gonna perform the same. Some are gonna go down, but based on the total 3 chart, I think we're gonna push up in the altcoin world until at least Q1 27. Rather, at least until the end of 2026, but as late as Q1 2027. Right. So for more confirmation on altcoins and their sort of continued success, I think we can look at the Ethereum chart as well. Another one that, I can appreciate, but also another major zigzag wave here. Pretty sure this is a zigzag wave. Even though it did drop pretty solid on the fib level here, this sideways action, this is not wave 3 type action. So, maybe before all of this played out, we could have said this was a wave 1 and a wave 2. But you got to be smoking good dope. You got to be smoking bad dope, actually, if you think this is a wave 3 type move. Wave 3 is typically the sharpest wave within the cycle. So I personally am very doubtful that this is a wave 3 move here for Ethereum on the macro scale. I could be proven wrong. It would not be the first time, but until that happens, I think Ethereum will also have a heavy correction in 2027. But looking at this currently, right, I think Ethereum does have the legs to go up to about 4,400. You can see this macro trend line here is very solid. We have this drop down lower here, but we can kind of consider that like an anomaly, even though it's two of these shits here. Very nice double bottom move here, but I think this trend line is very solid, a very continued action along it. And I think currently that Ethereum is pushing up to that $4,200 range. That may come. Yeah, I'm not gonna focus on that trend line too much. I really want to focus on the fib here. Yeah, so we should get to 4,350 here, roughly for Ethereum. But essentially, I think this is a zigzag wave here, and I think that I thought this drop here was going to line up with Bitcoin's heavy drop, but maybe this drop here instead. Let me make sure I'm looking at this shit. All right. You can also see very solid wedge here for Ethereum. It's not Elliott wave shit. This is just, chartish type stuff. So look at this red trend here. We got one on the top, of course, and then I could probably snatch this yellow one, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it like this. So let me chop these off for a moment. If we just bring this over here, you can kind of see there's a nice little wedge here going for Ethereum, right? So it broke below this trend line here, and if anybody was tracking this as a wedge before, maybe they freaked out and thought the shit was about to go to the floor. But these trend lines, even them, you can't treat trend lines as as foolproof. Like, hey, if this trend line breaks, then the whole formation breaks. Sometimes your trend line will break, but the structure that really counts is the Elliott wave structure, if you ask me. Yes, I'm an Elliott wave disciple. I live, breathe, eat, shit, Elliott wave theory. But I think this trend line here, this wedge, I think we will see this sort of area break here. Or maybe you could say this trend line should be on this angle. I don't know. I think it should be here, to be honest. But I think we'll see Ethereum drop below 2,000 mid 2026. And I say that essentially because of how this form is here. Essentially, this is a zigzag, right? So this zigzag is cool, it's fine, but this zigzag has to be longer in price than this area here, and currently it's not. So I'm expecting another zigzag to form. Shit. I forgot that my screen may be a little small on the video because of this restream layout. So I apologize if you couldn't see very clearly before. But yeah, I'm pretty confident this is a zigzag here, right? So we're gonna get a correction as a zigzag, more than likely. But then I think Ethereum is gonna push up for another sort of final zag there to complete this diagonal wave. And if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I would have said, I think Ethereum is going to go to 24K. And I proudly said that in many posts and many replies and comments. But looking at this more closely, more recently, I've dropped my target down to about 19K. But, I'm not all right, 19K, I think it's possible, but let's say that Yeah, I gotta stick with 19K. I think based on the total three chart, based on Ethereum's role as being like one of the first catalysts for many altcoins, that I think kind of in conjunction with the total three chart, that this is going to push to 19K based on the timeline that total three sort of requires for its formation to play out. An alternative play out or setup here for Ethereum would be essentially a push to this 100% extension level at 6,700. But it's hard to consider with the climate and with the sentiment of the market right now. I think that sentiment could very well change. But at least in my opinion, I think Ethereum is going to push to 19K. We have a fib that points there. We have a trend that points there. The total three chart kind of also suggests the same as far as a timeline going into early 2027. So unless Ethereum just goes super soft over here and just goes super slow, if it goes slow on this next wave up, after the end of Q2 or in Q2, whenever this drop comes, if the next ascension wave goes slow and to the side, then that's when I'll start to maybe drop my target down to that 6,700 range. But for now, I feel very strongly that Ethereum will have the legs to go up to 19K, right? But as I've said before, I think another good joint to show here, stable.cd. So this is a chart that shows considers all stable coins and their dominance in the blockchain crypto atmosphere, right? So if I'm looking at this from an Elliott wave perspective, which I just have to do, I think this is in a sort of flat correction here, an extended flat correction actually. This dropped a little lower than I would typically like to see it. Oh shit. No, it didn't. Let me see. Yeah, it's hard to get any more perfect on that drop actually. So I think it made a three-way move up here in what we'll call wave A. It also made a three-way move here down in what we'll call wave B. And then it also made a five-way move up in what we'll call wave C, right? So, come on, bitch. Fuck it. So, considering that this flat correction here is done, right? This ABC wave here, this is one full corrective motion. It made a hell of a pump, but all of this action has to be considered together, at least in my perspective. And I made these waves here. I highlighted these. It's been at least a week ago. I want to say it's been longer, but the days are just starting to run together. So yeah, this is moving very, very closely to as expected. I think this is dropping a little sharper actually than expected. So it looks like these stable coins are being deployed, rather, what I'm trying to say. It looks like they're being deployed and being invested into projects fairly quickly. I want to dive into this here. What time is it? 10 o'clock. I want to dive into this here. Let's see what total three. I'm sorry. Let's see what this is doing. Oh, we bleeding? What are we doing? Yeah, that ain't cutting it. All right, yeah, still got bottoms here. I don't think a new low is going to come for SPX today. I was expecting a three-way move down here, and I think we got one. I'm expecting a three-way move up here as well, and I think it should go to Should go to 6994 at least. So I mean, it very well could easily crack 7,000. It's just so close there, but I think it's gonna get to 6994 at least, and we should see more sideways action here. I'm not sure how this drop is gonna play out. If it'll turn into a triangle, if it'll stay what I think is gonna be a flat correction, or what the sideways action will be, from a fractal standpoint. But I do think it's gonna go sideways here for a couple of days, at least into early to mid next week. But let me get back on this stable coin chart here. My words almost got twisted up. But yeah, I think this is going to dive deeper. I want to dive in here and see if this is okay. See if this is a zigzag here, or if this is actually yeah, this should be firing up here. So we should be getting some, some injection of stable coin dominance here. And I think it'll push back up to this 10.84 range. As you can see, I had this orange line already sort of placed here waiting. But I thought it bottomed out here and that it would push up, but it looks like it dropped a little lower first. In either case, I don't think, I don't want to speculate on that too much, but I think this push is coming back up here on stable.c.d. And then it should 5, 6, 4, 8. Then it should drop somewhere down here where I have this pink line kind of set. Pretty much I'm expecting these waves to get longer. I'm expecting these waves to get deeper. I think this angle here may be a bit too sharp. Maybe it'll push out to, the end of Q1. But I think by the end of Q1, we'll see stable.c.d at 8% instead of this 10% area where I think it's headed currently. And that just means that we have a push coming in the altcoin world. I do have my list of favorites that I'm looking at in altcoin space. None more important, I think, none more promising than Dejitaru Suka. I'm not gonna show that chart because I don't think I have it like sanitized, right? But yeah, check it out if you haven't heard of it already. Dejitaru Suka. Some people call it BTC on ETH. Not BTC in its current state, but BTC back when that shit was like at some cents. In either case, thanks for locking in with me. It's your guy Horace. We're gonna do it again soon. Remember to consider risk definitely on Bitcoin as it reaches mid 2026. SPX gold as early as next week. Find your favorite altcoins. I do monitor Bitcoin, gold, and SPX freely on my Discord server. Lock in with me, check in with me. We can surf the waves together, man. It's gonna be a tumultuous winter coming up, regardless of what the news and a lot of these codes are saying right now. It's about to get very interesting. So stay safe, don't drown. It's your guy Horace. We'll do it again. Protect your peace, your purpose, and your profits. I'm gone.